Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar hosted by AlfaPeople in partnership with Microsoft, specifically for the events and exhibitions industry. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anna, and I really hope that you enjoy the session. I'll go through just a few pieces of housekeeping to begin with. So just to let you know, the session will be recorded and available on demand following the webinar today. And then also we have muted all attendees, but please do ask questions and you can submit these through the question and answer, which is open. We have also allocated some time throughout the webinar today to go through those. So please do put any questions that you have in the chat. And the agenda is very much split into two halves. So the first half will actually be focusing around that move to hybrid and virtual events. And this is when we'll be speaking and listening to our guest speaker from Microsoft. And then the second half of today's agenda is really to go through focusing on what is behind the scenes in your organization. So that infrastructure and how technology is really a huge catalyst to preparing for that success post-pandemic. So if you do have any questions after the first half, there's an opportunity to be able to say those and ask those. And also at the end of the session, we'll be able to ask those questions and answer them as well. So some exciting things in store for you this morning. And I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, William, who will explain some more.
Thank you very much, Anna. Morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. So I'm just going to give a little introduction on who we are as an organization. So AlfaPeople are a global Microsoft Dynamics partner. So we work with over 650 employees worldwide. We have offices located around the world. So we've got an office in New York in North America, large presence in South America, where we were actually Partner of the Year in 2019. A large presence in EMEA, where our headquarters is in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and then also in the Middle East. Here in the UK, we're based in London, so normally we would be working near London Bridge in the office there. And we're a Microsoft Gold partner, so we're part of the Inner Circle status, and that places us in the top 1% of Microsoft partners worldwide. So to give some context for that, there's around, on average, around 60,000 Microsoft partners around the globe. So that places us in the top 600 partners that Microsoft have. As one of Microsoft's largest partners, we have over 300 Microsoft certified consultants in 14 countries. So we work in multiple sectors, but we do try and expand our expertise within those sectors. So within each sector, we will have an industry lead that has prior expertise and prior knowledge of that sector, and will also have worked with projects within that sector. So we would have had Areti on the call today. So Areti was the lead functional consultant for the project at Hive. Unfortunately, but fortunately, I suppose, she is not able to join the call, and that is because she gave birth a week ago. So we had sort of planned the event to try and squeeze Areti in there, but unfortunately, the baby was very premature, but she's very healthy. So we wish Areti all luck going forward, and hopefully we'll see her very soon, but she's having a deserved break right now. We have got a great lineup though, and I want to welcome Rob Humphreys to the call. So Rob is sector lead for business applications at Microsoft. So Rob will be joining us to talk about how Microsoft have transitioned to their virtual events. I then want to introduce myself. So my name is William Fordham. I am Sales and Marketing Executive at AlfaPeople UK. I've been working with the London team for the past 2.5 years. Also joining me is Anna McLean. So Anna joined AlfaPeople with me around 2.5 years ago and is the marketing manager. So Anna works with a lot of the content that we put out there and also driving events and campaigns that we're running here in the UK. And then finally, MatCheck. So MatCheck very kindly has stepped in. MatCheck was the technical consultant on the Hive project, so has been working exclusively with the team at Hive, and very kindly has stepped in to talk a little bit about the solution further down the presentation. So I'm going to hand back over to Anna. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. So that just gives an introduction to who we are on the call today, and all of you joining us from the events and exhibitions and trade show space. So I wanted to start with a bit of an industry impact that COVID has had on our industry. And I think it's safe to say that we were probably one of the first to be hit, and you were one of the first to be hit, and the hardest so. But if lockdown has actually taught us one thing, it really has proved the need for that human interaction and that networking. And I was reading, it was UFI, there are a few statistics here on your screen, and then one of the global organizations for the industry, and representing over 50,000 employees. The association, I think, has 800 members organizations from about 90 different countries. And they came out with their media release in March. And this was a little bit before, so it was very much predictions at this stage. But you can see on the screen here that actually the impact is going to be short term. Right now we are in the short term, and today we're hopefully going to give you insight into how we can be using this short term to then prepare for the long term and be able to see how now we can adapt for a more successful future. And with the events and exhibitions industry generating on average a month globally $26 million, it's huge. So there is huge demand still for events, exhibitions, trade shows, conferences. It's just how can we keep and continue that demand and continue generating your customers' interest, but even now in this new normal and adapting. So thank you very much for filling out the survey for those who completed. And I wanted to share a few of those results because it was really interesting to see and hear your feedback. So the first question we asked is actually, what type of events are you running and organizing yourself? And what is your role within that? So excitingly to see that all of you do organize events. And the range of these events is from social events, so festivals, celebrations, to actually exhibitions and conferences and trade shows. And traditionally, these are not necessarily events where we would see them being virtual at all. But the majority of you actually showed that there is a need for them to be virtual right now. And so what have you been doing in the meantime to continue for that business continuity? And as you can see here, the first choice for many of you was actually to postpone your event. And this just shows great hope for the industry. So postponing the event and planning it for the future shows that we are encouraged to continue and come back to normal and have those face-to-face events. But then a mixed response was hosting events virtually. So some of you are like, yeah, I've tried this, I've given it a go. But the majority actually showed that you're having to move to a virtual event, but you might not necessarily know how. Perhaps you don't have the right infrastructure to deliver, or it might just be an event where you're actually not able to deliver it virtually. Nevertheless, some of you actually have had to cancel events, but we are hoping, and I'm sure you are hoping as well, that these will ultimately be postponed. And the next question was really your feedback on what has changed as a result of COVID in your organization. So what points stand out for you. And there were three main ones which a lot of people touched upon. And the first was really just adapting to the new situation. So whether it is virtual event or a hybrid event. The next was a greater need for technology. And this isn't just technology to deliver your events, but also technology for you internally, your infrastructure, whether you're working from home now, and adapting to this model. And a few of you actually touched upon business continuity as a highlighted point, and really just how can you simply still be best serving your customers and seeing a return from doing so. So we will be touching upon all of these throughout the presentation and the webinar today. And the final question is actually, when will we see the new normal? When is this going to begin? The majority, of course, predict next year, so 2021. And I'd like to share a very quick story. So this morning, in fact, I was scrolling through my phone and I'm a lover of country music. So if you've heard of the artist Kenny Chesney, he actually this morning announced his new tour going around the US next year, starting in May 2021. So if I can be singing and listening to country music in a football stadium in the US, then I think trade shows, exhibitions, all of the above are certainly on the horizon as well. And I'm now going to pass over to William, and who will introduce Rob Humphreys from Microsoft.
Thank you very much, Anna. So recently we have been discussing with Microsoft and a partner, Gartner, who are a research firm, about the industry trends within the events industry. We had a great customer journey with Hive, and we're going to tell you a little bit about that project later, but we wanted to discuss with the Microsoft team what was sort of going on within the industry, and what we sort of discussed was how Microsoft themselves as an organization had transitioned to virtual events and the great success that this had caused the organization. So we discussed how this has been possible, the increase in attendance that they had gained, and we wanted to talk about that on this call. So I don't want to steal any more of Microsoft and Rob's thunder, so I'll hand over to Rob, who's going to take us through that. Thank you very much, Rob.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you, Will, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to present at your event this morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Humphreys, and I lead our business application space in the UK for media and telco customers. Now, when I originally spoke with Anna and Will about this event, I was keen to support this in any way we can, because not only are we seeing the pandemic have a tremendous impact on the industry, but it's having a tremendous impact at Microsoft itself. Now, here at Microsoft, we organise and deliver hundreds of events a year, ranging from intimate niche events all the way up to stadium filling events lasting 3 or 4 days with tens of thousands of people attending. And to get our perspective of the impact of COVID on our events, I interviewed our CVP of Global Events, a guy called Bob Bejan, to get his perspective. And this is what he told me. So his first point was, at Microsoft, we're having to rethink about how we approach in-person events, not just for now, but the foreseeable future. So whilst the world is slowly moving out of lockdown, we don't see a return, I'm afraid, sorry Anna about that concept, but we don't see a return to mass physical events, certainly not in the short term. And we're now preparing for at least the next 12 to 18 months of having this new normal of the virtual medium. Now, even if events can happen within that time frame, we still feel there's going to be a lag, and we feel there's going to be a lag because people and attendees will need the confidence to be able to return to mass events and travel and everything else. So we're seeing this as the business as usual now for at least the next 12 to 18 months. Secondly, what Bob said was what we found that we couldn't replicate our physical events into a virtual event. Just taking a physical event as we've run year on year and then reskinning that into a virtual event wasn't going to work. They are different mediums and they do require a different approach that does need careful consideration. And as we look across our industry, the tech industry, we see a mixed approach. Now, some companies, Facebook, Google, etc., have chosen to cancel their marquee events, while others, Apple, ourselves, have decided to change the marquee events into virtual events. And this isn't to say that either approach is correct or one's wrong or one of them is right, but these are unprecedented times, and we're having to respond in different ways. And to give you an idea of how Microsoft has responded, I've pulled together a snapshot here of the events of the 3 months from March to May. Now you see the ones in red. Now these are the ones we've looked at and we've cancelled. And we either didn't have time to do it justice to move it into a virtual event, or we didn't feel the format or the attendees would actually benefit from being a virtual event. The ones in black, we've rescheduled and they've moved out to a time that we can deliver those. But lastly,
share your screen, then I'll be able to share your screen too.
Oh, is it not working? You're not seeing my slides?
Not yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We just want to know what the black and the red parts are.
Yeah. Those slides were brilliant as well.
But we can see you, which is all that matters. There we go.
Working?
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. Oh, it's gone again.
Oh, sorry. All right, let me know. Is that there?
Yep, there we go.
Perfect. Okay, so my apologies about that. So if we have a look at a snapshot from Microsoft, here's our events calendar to give you the idea of the approach that we've taken. And as I said, the ones in red we've cancelled, and these have been for a variety of reasons. The ones in black we've rescheduled, and the ones that we have in blue are the ones that we've chosen to change to a digital event. Now, the one I'm going to focus in on for this talk is Microsoft Build, which happened last month on the 19th and 21st. So as you saw, that Build wasn't our first digital event that we did. We had a number of digital events before that, some up to large-scale events such as the Microsoft Business Applications Summit. And these are some of the things we learned going into Build. So firstly, and probably most importantly, was the learning of not trying to replicate these events. The concept of breakouts and booths and expos we felt didn't really work or didn't really fit the digital format. And secondly, the run up to the event is critical. If I was to send you an invitation to a digital event that was 9 months in the future, it would be a disaster. It would be forgotten about, there'd be very little engagement, and you're unlikely to attend. But that's how we used to do things in the physical world, right? And we used to do that for good reason. One would be people could get budget approval to sort out their travel, to sort out their accommodation. They may even append a holiday or another business meeting to the event. But that's simply not required now. But you have to find a way that maintains people's interests. And thirdly, everything is shorter. not just the events themselves, but the demand gen to drive attendance, and also the presentations and post-event follow-up. And lastly, we had to retrain our execs how to present. So for years, these guys had mastered the art of presenting to large crowds, looking all around the room and aiming for a spot, normally 40 to 50 feet in front of them. Now, in the virtual world, that all changes. Your audience is now 12 to 18 inches away, and you cannot work the room. You can't look down at your notes. You'll lose that connection to your audience. And in our experience, one of our learnings were, do not underestimate the change management required to re-educate certain execs in regard to changing how they present. I won't mention any names. So what's Build? So Build is our premier developer event that we hold each year, and it's usually in Seattle. And every year we have 6,000 to 10,000 developers come around from around the world to learn about what we're up to. They learn new tips and tricks, they understand what our roadmaps are, and of course they have the ability to network. It is a paid-for event. It's normally over 3 days, and we get to deliver a whole host of material, and it's usually bespoke content that we painstakingly prepare just for Build. But as successful as it wasn't perfect. For example, we have hundreds of breakout rooms where presenters have pulled together content for their respective audiences. But out of the 300 or so different breakout areas, less than 80% of them had 20 attendees or less. So we knew there was room for improvement, even in the physical format itself. So what we did was redesign the whole experience, both from pre-event all the way to post-event, and we turned it into a 48-hour, always-on virtual event that spanned the globe. I'd like to now play a video for you of Bob Bejan himself talking about how he did it.
We would have never in the event space accelerated and understood and moved on the road to mastery in digital events at the rate at which we are right now if things had just been going on normally. The Microsoft Build has been the developers conference for Microsoft. All of the data to bear. We've got keynote speeches in big rooms, we've got an expo, we've got breakouts, and all the community and interactive connections work that gets done at any kind of event. The thing that's interesting about the time we're in right now is, of course, we're being forced to focus on this new medium. How do you reinvent an experience for an audience and make the most of what this interactive digital medium has to offer? This ability for people to watch TV and absorb a lot more information is a fundamental difference. Because you're dealing in a cinematic approach versus a theatrical approach, time compresses. You've got to think about time in a different way.
You know, there's different flavors of remote work.
I'd say probably 95% of the presenters are remote.
It's artificial intelligence.
Several hundred people delivering their programming from their bedrooms and home offices and kitchens, and pretty wild.
Welcome to my house.
I mean, we're taking some pretty significant technology risks. We're working very, very closely with the team's engineering team.
Ultimately, it's about systems of engagement.
To be that close to the product is super exciting. On the one hand, it's risky because we're putting it into production immediately and with large numbers of attendees.
Hi.
大家好.
Historically, Build is 80% the United States, 20% around the world of attendees. This year, 65% are from the rest of the world. So that sense of inclusion, it's kind of inspiring, actually. People are going to get to enjoy this stuff.
In Japan.
And we really are making something new in this medium. I think we've moved 2 years worth of evolution in about 8 weeks. And it's extraordinary.
So I think it's quite a good sneak preview in regard to how we've gone about Build. Now Bob will be releasing, as with the global events team, a series of videos going into more detail how we've actually went through the individual components of Build and our other learnings that we will make available to the community.
We would have never in the event space.
So if I move on, let me talk about it wasn't just the speed of how we quickly pivoted to produce this digital event, but it was the compressed time, both pre-event for demand gen, and then the post-event lead nurturing. And as I said, this would normally take about 9 months for Microsoft, but with the switch to digital, time is of the essence. What we found is that we had to whip up interest in a very short space of time and try to improve on previous formats. Our approach was to crowdsource the agenda through a session catalogue, and this helped foster an interest, but also avoided having empty sessions. It also kept the audience engaged leading up to the event, where we introduced things like gamification to make sure people stay connected. And this transpired both through the event and also posted as well. But the type of events that we did, type of sessions that we did, another approach is that we changed the type of content itself. So we have 4 key types of sessions over a spectrum ranging from left to right. Now the sessions on the left-hand side were Microsoft-led sessions, and these were the sort of classic large format keynote speeches or product launches that you would expect at a Microsoft event. But as you move to the right, the events were more community-led. Microsoft were merely the facilitators in these events, and the attendees led these sessions. Now our approach was to group like minds, or birds of a feather if you will, together, and we organise those groups by using things like geography or special interest areas or industry from the information that was collected and gained through the registration process. And what did we see? Well, here are some facts and figures taken shortly after Build. Firstly, Build, the virtual event of Build was a phenomenal success. Firstly, Bob referenced this in his video, but we were blown away by the inclusivity of the digital event format. As he said, normally over 80% of the 6,000 attendees are from North America and only 20% being from the rest of the world. And this stat was literally turned on its head with far more attendees from outside of North America. Secondly, the reach far exceeded the traditional physical reach that we'd had for previous Build events. Now, it's true that we didn't charge for Build this year, and some of the increase in attendees was no doubt due to that, but we believe the accessibility of the virtual format was key and really drove up both attendees to our event, but also ongoing engagement. So what did we learn? So the move from theatrical to cinematic shouldn't be underestimated. You cannot just rinse and repeat previous physical events. Another thing we learned was shorter is better. Everything moves faster and you're vying to keep attention. Don't just focus on shorter content, but also both your pre and post event activities. Thirdly, having a moderator to support your digital sessions is key. They are your connection to the audience and they drive the engagement. And lastly, use these events almost as a teaser or an introduction to the topic. Don't try and achieve everything in the one session. Point the audience to other self-service learning paths or content that they can take away from the event. Normally with Build, it would be delivered at Build and then it wouldn't happen again for a year. This year, we've used the condensed format to point our developers and our community to self-service content that they could use to continue to learn. So in closing, the one thing we have found from hosting Build and other digital events, and what was a real surprise to us, was the audience is far more forgiving. Previously, if something went wrong during a presentation or a keynote, like a light falling over or a screen freezing or any other continuity issue, it would be over social media within seconds. But this wasn't the case in the virtual world. We saw people's reactions change. And as an example, one of our execs who was presenting from home had an interruption during his presentation. And we've all been there, right? I mean, you've been on the Teams calls or the Zoom calls and the dog's barking in the background or kids are running in and demanding help with homework, or in my case, Amazon deliveries that get that come far too frequently and at the most inopportune time. But this guy had a gardener fire up his lawnmower right behind him and start mowing the lawn. Now, rather than lighting up the Twitter sphere, we actually saw an increase in positive sentiment that we were measuring on the day. And it's as if we're far more democratic in this pandemic world. It showed authenticity and a human side to this event. Look, who knows? This could be a unique form of Dunkirk spirit, right? But there was definitely a connection with the audience that we've never had in the physical space. Now, you won't be surprised to know that the technology behind our digital events was all based on the Microsoft Cloud, and we will be releasing all the details of all the different technology components, both ours and also our third-party partners tools that we've used to bring it all together. But at that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'll now pass you back to Will.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's very kind of you to talk about Microsoft, and it's great to hear about the success that you as an organisation are having moving to the virtual world. Very interesting to hear about that split now with attendance. So I'm just now going to open to some questions. None have been posted in the chat, so if you do want to ask questions throughout, please do write in the chat box, which is the top right of the team screen, and we can get to those we've got another question session at the end of the session. So if there's none at the moment, we will move on, and please, feel free to just post them in the chat, and we've got another one at the end, so we can answer those when we get to it. Thank you very much. So, and if we, starting the second sort of session, if you like, we work with Hive, and we've been working with Hive for the past few years. The quote just before is from their CEO, and this sort of highlights the view of the industry, and I think is what we as an organisation also see the events sort of going for. So Mark here says that although at the moment face-to-face events are not happening, and there's going to be a bit of time where that's just no longer the case, there is a future for face-to-face events, and face-to-face is central to the events industry, and so there's definitely a hope that these will return. But the point that he makes is that within this time where face-to-face cannot happen, there is a reliance on technology to fill that void and to fill that gap. And I think that having spoken to Microsoft and having heard about what the industry is doing, that is what we're seeing. There's a reliance on technology to fill that gap. So Hive, we are partners with Hive, and Hive are a global FTSE 250 events organisation. So they were recently known as ITE, which stood for the International Trade Exhibitions Group. They've now rebranded to Hive, and they work across countries. They have 1,200 colleagues worldwide, committing to designing and hosting more than 130 events a year. So the output that they're doing is monumental, and their vision is to create the world's leading portfolio of content-driven must-attend events. So they have multiple brands. They work in numerous countries. So the map there might show you the office locations that they're in. And with over 150 million turnover, they're listed as a FTSE 250 company. We met them a fair few years ago, where they were building and growing through acquisition. So they had numerous companies that they bought up with separate and siloed systems. And the conversation with them was to try and move all these separate instances and these siloed systems onto one cloud-based Microsoft instance. And actually, before that, there was discussion of them maybe choosing Salesforce, but we were able to pitch Microsoft to them and get Microsoft into the organization. So this is the sort of solution that we built their platform on. So Dynamics 365. We work exclusively with the Dynamics platform and specialize in customer engagement and the finance and operations modules. This is the platform which the Hive project was based on. So within Dynamics 365, you have a set of modules which can be purchased separately or as an overarching solution on Dynamics 365, but it's fully customizable, it's cloud-based, and it opens up a world of opportunities for companies to incorporate their conference software, the events apps, the floor planning technology, the marketing and publishing tools into their core business processes. So they have one instance and one single view of their customers. And this slide illustrates that the application allows organizations to have that one view. So whereas they might have had siloed parts to it, the Dynamics platform gives them a view of one single point of truth of their customer. It automates labor-intensive tasks, which we'll get to in a bit, and then it provides managers with better visibility throughout their organization to get a view of where the ROI is coming from, to get that consistent approach with the customer, and to allow them to see, even cross-country, and even with delivering different events within those different countries, one single point of truth. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Anna to talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, so based off of the work that we have done with Hive and their transformation, I thought I would just give a bit of an insight into the challenges that we commonly see within events organizations, and also how we have been able to transform one of our customers with the technology. But then whilst I'm going through these, so I'll start with the challenges and then talk more about the solution to those. But whilst I'm going through them, please do just have a think of your own company and how your organization might fit within this as well, if it's something that resonates with you or sounds familiar. And each of them I've broken down into kind of by department. So I'll start with marketing. And typically and traditionally, it seemed that marketing would create leads and then hope for the best. And the leads, which were then transitioning to sales, were really poor quality. And so there's poor conversion rates from sales. And it wasn't easy on the marketing because there's actually was no visibility of any previous event attendance. So how can you market to somebody if you have no idea if they've even attended or really what event they might even be interested in? And it was really challenging for marketing to go through and then enter the pre-booking cycle before it became a customer, because they just really had no visibility on what their audience interests might be. The next is then sales. So maybe your organization has one sales team, perhaps it has quite a few across different countries. So for Hive, they actually had a lot of different sales teams across so many different countries, as Will mentioned. But the problem with this is that every office was selling differently. Everybody was doing repetitive, manual, laborious tasks, and essentially this was really slowing people down. And this doesn't work well for the customer, because for your customers, because then, for example, they'll sign a contract, they'll send a contract, it will then have to be printed, it'll be paper-based, they'll have to scan it, wait for a response, then scan it to finance, and it was just really, really messy and a really long process. And not only does this kill trees, but it's just inefficient, and there was a huge delay in receiving the money. And as soon as you get your customer, you want to get them and have them commit. There was also, for sales, one of the biggest problems was actually having no information on the previous purchase history. So if an exhibitor bought a stand one year and then some chairs and, I don't know, electricity, these were all produced in separate orders. So there's no way of seeing actually what they bought in one event or 1 year. And there was then no formal process for discount approvals. So of course, sales are really keen to close a deal, and they did whatever they needed to do this. But this actually ended up resulting, and it can result for organizations, in revenue loss, because they're then open to offering whatever discounts there are with very little control. And another example for sales is goal management. So salespeople love a target, and they love having something to work towards. But actually, it was very wishy-washy, and they could write down whatever they wanted, and then management would then export these targets in an Excel spreadsheet. They'd go through the numbers, pay commission, but there was really no visibility of some long-term goal management objectives. Next is then finance. So one issue with finance, especially for global companies, or if you have attendees and participants from attending from all different areas around the world is actually exchange rate fluctuation. And planning an event maybe from 6 months in advance to 2 years in advance is really hard to know what is the exchange rate now and is it going to be the same in 2 years' time, and predicting this. Also, selling in multiple different currencies can be difficult, but now there's a way to actually manage all of this in CRM, which is brilliant. And then the salespeople would have to calculate VAT themselves. So 9 out of 10 times there was probably human error, as we all know things can go wrong. And this just meant that things were disjointed internally. So the contracts could be different from the invoices, which could be different from what the customer was getting versus finance. So just trying to streamline everything and make sure everything is very organized. And also for the events themselves. So finance were really keen on knowing, they want to know what money is coming in, when and from who. But there was a lack of payment schedules from the sales side. So if there's no terms defined, you could have one event being hosted in London, but actually all of those participants could be paying for that event in a completely different way. Some could be fully upfront, others could be in 4 installments. So this really wasn't very clear for finance. And also it really was difficult for them to then forecast. And then for customer profiling, so there was no 360-degree view of that exhibitor. So one attendee could actually attend an event in London, and then they could attend the same event or a similar event in Barcelona, maybe the same industry, but the organization would have no idea actually if that person has attended a previous event, and no idea that it was being sold to the same person but from 2 different offices. So there was huge segmentation on the customers, and it was really unclear to segment the leads and organizations database based on industry and by sector. And as you know in your organizations who you're delivering to, it's really important to know specifically what they are interested in. This also meant that there was no ability to really identify the stand sharers versus the stand holders. So one organization might actually buy X square meters of event space, but then they break that down into smaller sections. And there was no way of really showing, okay, this is the event space they bought, but now these people, so you might be stepping on somebody else's event space when you're actually there. And then the next one I highlighted is actually event setup. I think it's quite important, but internally behind the scenes for your organizations, it could be really difficult sometimes for you to, as a salesperson or project manager, to set up the event, and then the finance people will be setting up the same event in their systems and having to invoice. So just having that one single view is able to share documents. A lot of this was done paper-based. So like I said previously, just signing documents, printing them out, scanning them back in, sending them, putting a stamp on them. And it took a long time to do this. So something that may have taken maybe 20 days to actually sign a customer could now take an hour. And then price lists as well were very manual for setting up an event. So if I wanted my chairs, my electricity, everything, it would have to be selected one at a time. There was no way to really select multiple items for that event. And then document management. So no ability whatsoever to electronically sign a document. I'm sure all of you on the call today have signed a document online, and it's just so much easier. It happens right away, and you don't have to worry about, do I have ink in my printer, all of this stuff. And there was actually no format whatsoever about the documents which could be created. Most of them were just Word templates. So if you're managing your documents as a Word template, these could actually be edited and changed. So having select and accessible documents is really important as well. And then from a customer service side of things, we have all tried to reach out to customer service, and you just cannot get a response quick enough when you either have a problem or something that you're looking for. It's never quick enough. So let alone when you're reaching out to somebody and they have no idea of who you've spoken to previously or what you've talked about. It can be so frustrating for the customer. And here there was no record of a history, no record of conversations. And then internally, when trying to manage the volume of requests and inquiries, there was no reporting or statistics on how many ticket volumes come in per day, how many requests they've had, which ones have been responded to, which haven't. They would just come in as an email, and then it was really difficult to transact and see the response time and how quickly they were being responded to. It was pretty much just when they came in, we'll take some time and then respond. And then finally, the last one is reporting. So each team reported in different ways, and it was really difficult to look at the data and report accurately. Finance were having to manually report some data. And then because for the sales team, there was actually very limited performance-based culture, it made it even harder to set key objectives and KPIs. So they would say, oh yeah, let's set a goal. And then if we don't hit the goal or we do hit the goal, we'll just see if we do hit it. But it was not data-based. It wasn't accurate goals because it wasn't from any previous knowledge or insight. So just to summarize all of these challenges that you can see on your screen, it very much is behind the scenes what you guys are working with. There are a lot of segregated systems, absolutely no single view of who your customer is and what they are interested in, a lack of automated processes, so everything was manual, and all the sales teams were working differently, all the offices were differently, and this just translates into a varied customer experience, which is what you do not want. So I will now highlight very briefly the business solutions, and actually to these, how we have helped Hive, and then also how we can help any other organization too. So the leads, these are now automatic. So a lead comes in, you're able to qualify whether it's a hot lead, cold lead right away. They are allocated to the right team specifically at that immediate point of time. And really excitingly from this, they're using dashboards to be able to see all of those conversion rates and reporting. So when a lead is converted into an opportunity, have a view on that. So where was this marketed from? And for marketing, this is really important because then they can see what campaigns are working and kind of just get that history of the customer's purchase history and all of the data that they want from their campaigns. And then for sales, it's a standardized process across every country, followed globally. There is a discount review process, so a salesperson has to get approval, but this is super quick, super efficient, and it's all happening right behind in the background. Also able to see a floor plan integration system. So previously this, I don't think I said this, but it was done with PDFs, and maybe they would have to go onto another website and then look up the floor plan and then select and just track it in a spreadsheet. But now in your account, in CRM, your database, the floor plan will come up for that event they're interested in, click on what you want and see that. And then there's also the ability to add products really, really quickly, and just automation for booking for next year. So if somebody is interested, a rebooking takes 2 seconds. For finance, as I mentioned previously, the sales team were doing their VAT by themselves manually. So there is now, at the click of a button, able to calculate all of that. Also add currencies. So be able to create an order in a different currency is really, really useful if you have a lot of different countries that you're working in and hosting events with. And then another thing to be clear of is, as you might know, if you are hosting events, so the United Nations have put sanctions on where you are able to and where you are not. So previously, there was really no clarity on where you cannot sell, whereas now that's all highlighted. So if somebody does come in as a lead, it might be a good lead, but then we're not able to sell to that country. So just putting a blacklist of accounts and where they're not actually able to sell. And then also highlighting accounts. So for marketing and for sales, being able to see from finance what they have approved as an account who has paid all their bills or who hasn't, will then impact how they are then marketing to them or selling to them. And then for customer profiling, so just being able to see a history of all the purchases, all the conversations, and visualize this in a dashboard whenever you need it, at the click of a button, really right away, and give that history of who has attended the event and who are the stakeholders and standholders in that. And for event setups, like I mentioned, it was pretty much one price list and you had to select products individually, whereas now you can select multiple products from a list, and the finance are actually able to approve this. So if you select all these products, they then really quickly automatically goes to finance. They will then say reject or approve, and it's just a lot more efficient, a lot more seamless, and gets the customer more quickly. In terms of documents, so it's no longer paper-based. This is all managed electronically and in the cloud. Signatures, like I said, have gone from days getting them to hours, which is really, really efficient. And then customer service. So these no longer come in as an email. Now the customer can go to the website, and then in CRM, they can click the link. In the website, they can click the link. It will then go straight into CRM, so you can see everything, all the information about the customer right there and then. It's allocated to the right person, and there's actually standard templates which are able to be sent out as and when for even quicker responses. And this actually helps sales a lot as well, because for the sales team, they are now able to see if there are any problems or if the customer has been inquiring. So the customer history is not only beneficial for the whole organization, but specifically sales. And then finally, reporting. So like I said, all of this is now real time. So if management want to pull a report right away, they are able to do so in minutes rather than 20 or so days. And it's all standardized through Power BI. The sales and marketing performance is very real time. You're able to see what you've won, loss analysis. They've got their goal metrics all set up. And then, yeah, even for finance, there's day-to-day operations, which you might want, like invoice status. So this is just an overview of all of the business challenges and then the solutions to those, and how we have been able to transform one organization, a FTSE 250 organization, Hive Group, to a more efficient way of working.
Thank you very much, Anna. So just due to time, I'm just going to quickly go over some of the IP that we created. So like Anna spoke about, Dynamics 365, you have lots of elements which are out of the box, and we sort of call that out of the box functionality. But with projects, like with Hive, we had to create many sort of elements of customization that helped fit to their business needs and to their customers' business needs. So in terms of what we worked with Hive to get to the point that we are at now, we made quite a few IPs and unique developments. So customer profiling, that's developed since we've started working with Hive, but this provides a list and a record of all the products that are purchased, so that we make sure that they are consolidated into one singular record. Customer categorization, so whenever you add people to an account, you can say what industry they are within, and this consolidates sector breakdown. So when you look over an event, you can sort of see what industries are attending your events. Automatic lead allocation, so getting leads from another solution Marketo and automatically allocating them to certain events based on logic. And then finally, which Anna touched upon briefly, was the discount approval process. So this is something that actually Hive had a bit of an issue with due to their sales teams automatically allocating certain attendees discounts. So what they would find is that at the end of the year, they might have a revenue stream which is below what they would have thought, and this was because sales teams were actually automatically allocating it. So we helped them build this so that there was an approval process, so that they couldn't automatically add that. VAT calculation. So linking the current solution to finance to get that automatic calculation of VAT on top of a sale. Payment scheduling, so the creation of standardized payment schedules, which meant that again the sales teams could not decide what they wanted to do. And then finally, FX value calculation, so automatic calculation of each opportunity and then converting that. And then the final two, so opportunity and order multi-product selection. So this was a UI made for the sales team. So the customer user interface was just a standardized, simple pop-up that allowed the sales team to select multiple products from a drop-down rather than search for them in the CRM. So you can imagine if all across the 14 countries that Hive are producing events within, if the sales team are having to do that, it's a manual, it's a long task. So just this pop-up created so much time saving for the sales team to automatically add it in and to get that job done very quickly. And then finally, just the price lists. So again, saving a lot of time, just adding multiple products to a price list. So instead of having to manually go through, the sales team could click on a drop down, select which price lists and products within that price lists for that event setup. And this is just a great quote from John Gulliver, who's the Chief Operating Officer for the project. But it sums up the work that we've done with Hive. And yeah, we hope to continue that good work into the future. And now, without further notice, I'm going to hand over to Maciek.
Thank you, Will. So, as been said, in Hive example, we resolved the business challenge by implementing Dynamics 365 CE, so customer engagement, completely cloud-based. We created a single sales interface, replacing distributed local systems, because previously, as Anna mentioned, the organization has been very fragmented when it comes to software. So effectively, this Dynamics 365 implementation is a single interface and makes the sales process looking the same for different countries, for different regions, and for all salespeople. It effectively covers all areas that Anna described. From the whole customer journey, from acquiring lead through nurturing that with Marketo, because we have some custom integration with Marketo, through creating opportunity through orders, and up to invoicing and sending the invoice to the local finance system, because Hive Group is a group of companies effectively. So for different customers, for different events, different legal entities are responsible for invoicing. And previously it was a very manual and paper-based task for salespeople to do the invoicing, to apply the proper VAT and send the invoice to the final local finance and tax system. At the moment, the platform is doing all of it automatically. The system has been created with a very fundamental assumption that it needs to be mobile friendly, and by mobile friendly meaning phones, but also tablets with pen and touch screen. And it needs to be multilingual. So the system is translating to 6 different languages, and every single component we build needs to and has to be multilingual and mobile friendly, and that's what happened. Well, the solution is truly cloud-based, right? So it allows people to work outside of the office. It's not like it used to be before, where only the local network was allowing them to access the system. This is a true cloud solution where everyone around the world can work with the system. And I think the very good example that will illustrate how it actually works in the real life and where it meets the real life events, but where our technology meets the real life event is the rebooking process. So as Anna mentioned, it's a very fundamental process in the event industry. And in case of the system we built for Hive, the rebooking process starts immediately during the event. As the system is cloud, as the system is very central and streamlined the experience for salespeople, they can just go with a tablet with a Dynamics application turned on from stand to stand and offer rebooking for the next year event. It's very simple from the salespeople perspective because the interface has been built with them in mind primarily, but behind the scenes, quite a lot of stuff happens. Orders are created automatically, contracts are created automatically, all branded per event. And they are submitted through DocuSign and immediately available to be signed by people on the tablet with a pen. Once that happens, and obviously then the order becomes completed, it goes to the local finance system. Those local finance systems, it's really many of them. The system automatically knows to which system it should be sent. When it calculates VAT, it knows what VAT matrix should be applied. All of it happens without any interaction from salespeople. All the documents are stored in the SharePoint, securely signed and well, legally binding, right? Because we are using a very proven platform here. Yeah, so this is just one sub process really. I think we need to wrap up, but it's quite a lot of processes we covered. Technically quite complex when it comes to conditions, to number of legal entities and the complexity of the business, but from the salespeople perspective, this is a very simple and streamlined experience. You know, doing things like upselling the orders, selling some technical items is just a few clicks away, where the whole products in the product taxonomy accessible in one screen without switching between applications. And it really is literally minutes to finalize the order and make sure that it goes and is invoiced properly, and then this invoice is collected by finance without any issues, technical issues. There are more processes, of course, and we obviously, in each company, with each customer, we work differently, and then we figure out different requirements. But in this example, I think this is just a very standard and very basic process, although not the only one. I will hand it back to Will.
Thank you very much, Maciek. So I think just due to time, it'd be best if we move to the questions part. So if you do have any questions on anything that we've presented or anything other within the events industry, or anything you'd like to learn more about, then please post it in the chat box, and we'll try to answer those when they start to come through. Thank you. No questions so far. I've got a question through from Anna, but I don't know that's that's viable. Any questions? Any questions on the Dynamics platform or the Microsoft Teams live events? Okay, I think that's it. Anna, over to you.
Thanks, Will. So thank you everybody for joining today, and thank you especially to Microsoft, to Rob Humphreys for joining us and sharing such good insight into their own transition to virtual events and the success that they're having from that. Just wanted to highlight, it doesn't matter whether you are doing a hybrid model, a virtual event, or if you're still hoping for the best for in-person events to come in 2021, but you still need to manage your leads, manage the event itself, all of the preparation, have that data, have that reporting. So now is the best time to minimize that disruption in your organization internally, to then prepare for that successful future for your organization and for the industry to come back more and stronger and better than ever before. So thank you all for your time. Apologies, we've overrun by 5 minutes. The recording will be shared with you following this, and any questions, please do get in contact with myself, AlfaPeople, Microsoft, and William Fordham's contact details will be available up here. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you very much, everyone.